Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cinemaholic Productions. My name is Spencer, and I am a cinemaholic.
I'm Ryan, and I as well am a cinemaholic.
Today we have a big show, but first I want to thank Craig Chapitis, who provided the music for the introduction video for this week's episode, as well as our theme song, which you will hear in next week's episode, and we will give him a shout out next week as well. So let's get right into the show, and Ryan's actually going to introduce a new segment to us. So Ryan, go ahead and tell us.
Awesome. So we're starting something new that we're going to be doing every week, and we're calling it the watch list. So we're going to run down just briefly what we've been watching in the previous week, and we'll go ahead and score it. And then after that segment, today we're going to be moving on to our Halloween special, where we wrote down lists of our favorite recommendations for the Halloween holiday. And we're going to be reading those off, some honorable mentions, and then we'll go through our top 5 recommendations. So to start us off, Spencer, what have you been watching?
So this week I had the chance to check out the first movie was 31, which is the new Rob Zombie movie. He also directed films such as House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, both of which I did not like. But I thought I'd check this one out. Went to Sundance this year, if I'm not mistaken. It debuted at Sundance, I believe. And I'll read the plot summary on IMDb. It says 5 carnival workers are kidnapped and held hostage in an abandoned hell-like compound where they are forced to participate in a violent game, the goal of which is to survive 12 hours against a gang of sadistic clowns. 3 for 3. I did not enjoy this movie, like, basically at all. Rob Zombie is somebody who I will not be watching anything of his anymore. I don't have too much to say about this. It's brutal. It's just kind of nasty all around. Unlikable characters, just gross for gross sake, and I don't really like that type of a movie, and Rob Zombie seems to be the type of guy who just loves making that type of movie over and over again. So I don't know. Have you had a chance to check anything out by Rob Zombie, Ryan?
No, I've never watched anything all the way through. I saw bits and pieces of 31 a few weeks ago. It did premiere at Sundance. There was a lot of hype about it, but I don't like that kind of stuff. And it's like you're saying, it was just gore. It was just that for the sake of being that, which a lot of people enjoy. A lot of people came and saw it at our local theater, but I couldn't stick around for it. It's not my thing.
Yeah, I gotcha. See, look, this is the type of movie that has a midget Hitler who just runs around and like stabs people and says really nasty, gross things. And if that sounds like your thing, then maybe you should check out 31. It wasn't my thing. The only really positive thing I have to say about this movie is there were some certain scenes that were shot in black and white, and I thought the black and white looked really striking. That's about all I have to say that's really too good about it. The gore was handled, I guess, well, but I'm not into that, like I said. So I'm going to give 31 a 2 out of 10. It wasn't something that I'm into. Like I said, after this movie, I think Rob Zombie has officially alienated me as an audience member. Not going to be returning to visit his career at all. Next, I'm going to be talking about Black Mirror, which is a show that was picked up by Netflix, actually. And it basically follows, I'll read the plot summary on IMDb. It says, a television anthology series that shows the dark side of life and technology. Season 3 premiered, I believe, a week ago. And there are 6 episodes in it. As it says, it's an anthology series, kind of a Twilight Zone-ish sort of thing, but more based in technology. This show is so awesome. Every episode in this season is really just great altogether. My favorite episodes were titled, let me pull up the list, Playtest. I really dug Playtest. That's basically a episode that kind of showed a virtual reality type of experience, but more futuristic, and it was put the main character in a survival horror game. And I thought that was awesome. It was directed by the guy who did 10 Cloverfield Lane, Dan Trachtenberg. And then the next episode that I really loved was called San Junipero, which that's probably the best episode in the season. Got tons of critical acclaim. And it's basically a love story that is told kind of in this virtual world as well. And I don't want to give too much about it away, but it is so, so great. That's one of the best hours of television I've seen in a really long time. And this has been a year of great TV. And then the last episode is the last episode of the season. Episode 6, Hated in the Nation is what it's called. And just another great episode. Actually, that one's like an hour and 30 minutes long, and it has the quality of being just a great movie. Highly recommend Black Mirror, guys. If you have a chance to check it out, I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. That's like a crazy high score. And it's justified because it's such quality television. I'm telling you, if you have Netflix and you're not checking Black Mirror out, that's a crime, especially if you love movies, good storytelling, smart science fiction that makes you think a lot about things. You should really give this show a shot. Then the last thing I want to talk about is The Walking Dead season 7, the premiere episode. I actually won't be scoring this just because we're only one episode in the season. It's kind of like Westworld. I don't see a point in scoring on just one episode, but wow, this is quite the episode. I won't get into too many spoilers in case there are people who aren't caught up on it. But holy crap, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance as Negan is crazy. He is so sadistic, so sadistic. He's like almost as sadistic as Ramsay Bolton in Game of Thrones. Just, my goodness, there were 2 death scenes in this episode that are just like, oh my goodness, that was so brutal and just raw, gross, so gory. They might have taken it too far, maybe. I don't know. It's Walking Dead. They've always been pretty gory, but man, I think they outdone themselves this time. And Andrew Lincoln's performance as Rick in this episode, he was so good. The opening scene is actually my favorite scene in the entire episode. It's just a scene where Negan and Rick are like just talking to each other, and it is so tense. I was like on the edge of my seat through that whole scene, and I kind of wanted to see more like that. Unfortunately, they didn't give us that throughout the rest of the episode, but still, I think that this season is something worth tuning in if you've like kind of fallen away from The Walking Dead. I was about to. At the point where I was at, I was hate watching this show. Didn't really like it, but really curious to see how they develop Jeffrey Dean Morgan. But that's all I got to say on my watch list. Like I said, I'm not going to score this one. So Ryan, what have you been watching?
So I've just got a bunch of movies on mine this week. If you do follow me on Twitter, I've been trying to do like reaction emojis and texting out a bunch of scores and stuff. So all of these I've already talked about on Twitter, but I'll just go through them really quickly. The first one was Denial. I'll read through the synopsis. An acclaimed writer and historian, Deborah Lipstadt, must battle for historical truth to prove the Holocaust actually occurred when David Irving, a renowned denier, sues her. So it basically is based on true events. It's a biopic. I think it starts back in like 93, and the actual event happens in 2000 or something like that. I feel like it does portray the events very well. It's a stellar cast. I really enjoyed this movie. There were some points in it that kind of dragged on. I think the execution overall could have been done and handled a little bit better. I feel like this is the year of Rachel Weisz. I've seen her in so many films, and I think she still has like 1 or 2 more coming out throughout the end of the year. So looking forward to that. Overall for this one, I'm going to have to go ahead and give it a 7.5 out of 10. Really, really good movie. I definitely recommend it. It's out in theaters right now. Have you, Spencer, have you heard anything about this one, or are you going to go catch it?
I haven't heard about that. Sounds like a really interesting plot. I do agree with what you said about Year of Rachel Weisz, though, and I do like her a lot, so it's definitely something I'll check out for sure.
Perfect. So I know this next one I'm definitely going to butcher. I don't know how to say it. Deserto. I it's awesome. I really enjoyed it. Not as good as Denial, but it was still captivating. I would say this one I saw in the theater, but I would definitely suggest waiting and catching this on TV. I feel like this is a really good one to invite a few people over and just catch it. Don't necessarily make it in an event, but the premise is a group of people trying to cross the border from Mexico into the United States, and they run into a man who is taking it upon himself to be border patrol. He's just a local, and he goes out and he gets drunk, and he decides to pick off all the illegals as they come through the border in this popular spot. I can't pronounce the lead actor's name, Gale. I think it's Gale Barnell. I caught him in the Amazon series, original series earlier this year. What's that series called now? He plays the maestro. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
Oh, Mozart in the Jungle. That's what it's called. That was actually really, really good. I think he got some nominations for that, but overall, this one I would give a 6.5, something to catch, but don't put it, high on your radar. My final one that I'm just briefly going to talk about is a PBS documentary. Everyone is talking about Hamilton. It's exploded. It's making so much money on Broadway. This documentary is about how they made the play, the musical. If I'm not mistaken, the director of the movie is friends with Lin-Manuel Miranda, the writer and star of Hamilton. And before, right as they were getting into the process of really hammering out Hamilton, his friend Alex Hortwez approached Lin, and he said, can I just record the process? I think it'd be really interesting. They had no idea how big and monumental this production was going to become, but they just started recording the process, and it was really intriguing to see how this came from an idea 7 years ago through the process of where it is now, making so much money, sweeping the nation. It just went double platinum, I think. The soundtrack did. It's become a huge deal. And surprisingly, I didn't expect much out of this documentary, but it was really well made and put together. This is the director's first feature that he's tackled, documentary. He's done some shorts and stuff, but this was his first one, and I was really impressed with how it turned out. Overall, I'm going to end up actually giving it an 8.5, which is a lot higher than I thought it would be, and it's a really good score. I couldn't quite get it to a 9. I don't think, I reserve those ratings, but it floored me. It was actually really good. So if you have 90 minutes and you're interested in the process, I think that's the dividing, is if you're interested in this, you're going to really like it. But if you have no interest whatsoever, or if you're a Hamilton hater, then by all means skip it. So those are my 3. That's the end of this segment. We're gonna go ahead and launch right into our Halloween special. So, do you have some honorable mentions for us, Spencer?
I do. I have actually one honorable mention, and that is the Blair Witch Project, which I actually just recently had a chance to revisit. With a new movie coming out, I decided to go back and watch the first one again. I'll read the plot summary according to IMDb. 3 film students vanish after traveling into a Maryland forest to film a documentary on the local Blair Witch legend, leaving only their footage behind. If you somehow manage to live under a rock and never have heard of the Blair Witch Project, then I would highly actually recommend this movie. I think it holds up really well, And as a found footage movie, it's just the best example I think you can have of showing that this technique is awesome. The great thing about this movie is that's really built on the kind of less is more premise, and I just thought it was terrifying, well acted, great. Have you seen the Blair Witch Project, Ryan?
I haven't seen the original, but it kicked off the whole found footage thing, and they made the movie for like under $1 million, and then boom, it blows up, and then all of a sudden you get all of these, found footage, make them for cheap. It started, what all the model that all horror movies are going off of now, which is make it for cheap and then have a big opening weekend and double your money back, kind of a thing. So
definitely. Then the next one I'm going to talk about is actually a movie that came out 2 years ago, I believe, 2014. It's called The Guest. It's directed by Adam Wingard. Have you heard of this movie, Ryan?
I think I've heard of it, but I that's all. I've heard of it mentioned. I know nothing about it.
Okay, I'm going to read the plot summary on IMDb. A soldier introduces himself to the Peterson family, claiming to be a friend of their son who died in action. After the young man is welcomed into their home, a series of accidental deaths seems to be connected to his presence. Man, this movie is so awesome. It is so good. It's like just a throwback to 80s kind of horror hybrid with action and kind of comedy. It's really a genre bending movie and such a great experience. Dan Stevens is the lead actor in it. And after watching this movie, I think this guy should be James Bond. Man, The Guest is just such a fun movie. I believe it's on Netflix. I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix, but at one point it was. But I'd say it's good enough just to buy on Blu-ray immediately and watch, because you could probably find it for super cheap. This is a small indie movie, and just so awesome, so great, and so underappreciated as well. The next movie I'm going to be talking about is Halloween, the original 1978 film, I believe, directed by John Carpenter. And this was his first film. And I'll read the plot summary on IMDb as well. It says, on Halloween night of 1963, 6-year-old Michael Myers stabbed his 15-year-old sister to death. He was institutionalized, and according to his doctor, Sam Loomis is the personification of evil. On the day before Halloween, 15 years later, Myers manages to escape and heads for his hometown. This movie is just a classic, great Halloween movie, perfect for a movie night. So much fun, excellently shot, great soundtrack, just iconic horror movie villain with Michael Myers. Just such an awesome movie, especially if you're kind of like a film buff who kind of likes watching old movies and seeing where these great directors such as John Carpenter, who actually has another movie I'll be talking about on my list. It's just seeing his first movie and seeing kind of the techniques that he would later capitalize on in his career is just so great. And it's just a movie you can revisit every single year and just get caught up in the spirit of the season. But I think I'll turn the time over to you now, just after sharing those couple of picks, to go through your honorable mentions and your first 2 picks on your list.
Sounds good. Halloween was re-released in a few theaters on Saturday, and I was able to just peek in right before they had a 15-minute interview and introduction by John Carpenter, and he's a legend. I love this movie. It's in my honorable mentions, and just to know everything, all the groundwork he set for horror. And one thing that he said in this introduction that really stood out to me was that he would do the soundtrack for his movies too. And specifically this one, he went and he shot the movie. And then he said, I always make the soundtrack based off of the movie. So I'm not thinking of how the soundtrack is going to sound. I'm going into this movie I'm filming the movie, then I'll sit down and I'll watch it scene by scene, and I'll let the movie speak to me. And that's where the soundtrack comes from. The soundtrack is inspired from the movie, which is so astonishing because the soundtrack of this is so monumental and so provocative. It's just fantastic. Some of my other
very atmospheric is just what I was about to say. And the same goes for the movie. John Carpenter's very good at building an atmosphere.
Definitely, which leads me perfectly into my next honorable mention, which is It Follows, which does the same thing. The thing with Halloween was it was in that era, and so it personified it very well. It Follows is in our era. It came out last year, but it's still, it captures the essence of the 80s, and the music is phenomenal. It's fantastic. I'm interested. I'm going to read off the rest of my honorable mentions, and I'm interested to see if you've seen these or what your take is on some of these.
Sure.
The first one is Eraserhead. The second would be Alien, The Thing, What We Do in the Shadows, and The Witch. Do you have any thoughts on my honorable mentions?
Some of those may or may not be on my list. But quickly, the one I want to mention that's really interesting to me that you have on your list is Eraserhead. Eraserhead is made by, on some days, my favorite filmmaker, who is David Lynch. David Lynch is so awesome. He's made what I consider to be one of my favorite movies of all time. Not Eraserhead, it's actually Blue Velvet, but Eraserhead is just one of those movies that I love. It's the same thing as the way I look at Halloween. It's kind of paved the way for David Lynch's career, and it's a movie that I revisit a lot. I watch a lot. It's one of those ones I'm kind of fascinated with knowing the meaning of, and it's one of those ones that has a very ambiguous type of plot, so you have to interpret and see what you think the symbolism of the movie means. And the rest of your honorable mentions are that's a great list. Those are all great movies. I like them all. It Follows was awesome. The Witch was actually in my top movies of 2016 list earlier this year. And yeah, great list. So
awesome. Sweet. Yeah, I as well. I love David Lynch. Holland Drive, The Elephant Man, and Blue Velvet are all brilliant movies. So I think it would have been a shame to not even mention Eraserhead on my honorable mentions, because it, like you said, everything you said. So my first one that I want to talk about, let's see, right here, Psycho, classic. This, I think, I've said it time and time again, I am not a huge horror guy. And it hasn't been until recently that I've started getting into it and being brave enough to even try the genre. But thinking back and looking back, I think this is one of, if not the first horror movie that I saw. It scared the hell out of me. It was so, like, I think that's the trend of these lists that we've made, is this one as well started setting the tone for everything that was to come. And it was so bold of Hitchcock to introduce his lead female and then get rid of her right off the bat. That was so different from everything else that was happening. Really set the groundwork for nonlinear storytelling, and I think a lot of nonlinear stories that are told today can look back and be like, oh, Psycho, that was the one that got to us. I've loved this movie. Hitchcock is such a master at the craft of storytelling. The next one on my list is Shaun of the Dead. I love this movie. It's hilarious. Edgar Wright is just, as well, a master. Simon Pegg, him and Edgar Wright just like buddies, because he is in every single one of his movies.
Yeah, I think they're pretty good friends. They do collaborate with each other quite a bit with the Cornetto trilogy and other things.
And I think it's kind of a Quentin Tarantino, Samuel Jackson kind of a thing. When Tarantino's writing his movies, he can write specifically for him so well. And I think that's one of the things that really works is they get each other, and the comedy really pays off. And I would say this is in probably one of the top all-time comedies. It is really snappy, really witty, really good. He's very good at telling the storytelling through editing, through sound, through all of the aspects of film, and that's why this movie works so well. So if you're going into the holiday, the Halloween holiday, wanting a horror movie full of comedy, you don't necessarily want to be scared to death, I would definitely recommend Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the better horror comedies. I agree with that. It's up there with like Young Frankenstein and that kind of just caliber of great, great horror comedies. So I'll get back into my list. The next movie on my list is actually The Babadook. I think this one was released in 2014 as well at the Sundance Film Festival. It's directed by Jennifer Kent, who is an Australian female director, and it was her directorial debut. And this movie is one hell of a directorial debut. It is so, so great. So scary too, and really contained. It's a really contained movie. Not enough people talk about how contained this movie is, actually. It's really kind of makes you anxious about if you're ever thinking about one day being a parent, especially when you see this child. This child's just crazy and awful, and it really kind of brings this symbolic kind of crazy horror fairy tale-ish type of thing, and I really dug this movie. Have you seen this movie, Ryan?
No, mainly because I've heard a lot about it, and I've heard it's one of the most scary movies that have ever come out, and people have hyped it up so much that I've chosen to opt out of it for now.
Yeah, it's super. So there's like scenes in this movie that straight up made my skin like crawl. It was crazy. This movie is just, it gets under your skin and it stays there the entire time. And then even like days after, you're still thinking of this movie. The ending is like haunting. I can't wait to see what Jennifer Kent does next. I'll watch anything she does just because of the caliber of this film. The next movie I'm going to be talking about is The Thing, directed by John Carpenter. This was one of the ones in your honorable mentions that may or may not be on my list, and it is on my list. The Thing is so great. Some of the best practical effects ever in any movie, like ever. There are sequences in this film that are so, so awesome. Like John Carpenter, such a master with like body horror, and some of the sequences in this movie are just so skin crawling and just so great. Horror at its best. I love The Thing so much. You have any thoughts on The Thing, Ryan?
I could just echo everything you said. I actually do remember the first time I saw this. I was in like 6th grade, and my teacher showed it to us. And maybe this and the movie It. I think those are the two movies that scarred me from horror and turned me away so early that I was like, nah, But it's so iconic, like you said, John Carpenter. He's a master, and I don't know. It's just the practical effects, like you said, just brilliant. It's utilizes everything that it wanted to do, and it just capitalizes on it.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. And Kurt Russell, just such a great main hero character. So before I get to my number one pick, why don't you go over your third and second pick, and then I'll go over my first, and then you'll go over your first.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So let me go ahead and throw this up. Sweeney Todd. I was going through my list, and like we were talking about before we started recording, I found a lot of mine were more classics, and this is one of the ones that I initially didn't have on my list, and then I went out this morning, and while I was driving, I was like, Sweeney Todd, why is that not even on my honorable mentions? That's definitely one that I need to talk about, because every now and again you get one of those musicals that are just gems. I feel like that's something that the industry is just trying to do. Recently they're like, oh, let's make a musical, let's try and get an Oscar this year. but this is one that really, really paid off and worked well. Tim Burton is the director. It takes place in London. It's about a man, Benjamin Barker, aka Sweeney Todd, who sets up a barbershop downtown, which is the basis for his operation, where he's sharing this building with a woman who makes meat pies. And so they start collaborating together, and he starts murdering people, and she turns them into meat pies and sells them, so they can really help each other out that way. And it's so demented, so disgusting, but brilliant at the same time. This is Tim Burton, for me, usually is a hit or miss. This one really hit for me. Some of his are just like way too weird or stylistic, and they don't click with me. But this one really, really did pay off. My next one is going back to a more classic, which I'm interested if you've seen this one. I originally saw it as a stage production, and then I went back and I saw the movie Wait Until Dark. Audrey Hepburn is the star of this. The premise off of IMDb says, a recently blinded woman is terrorized by a trio of thugs while they search for a heroin-stuffed doll that they believe is in her apartment. I like what you said earlier. I think you were talking about the Babadook, where it's a very contained movie. This as well is just a very classic contained movie. Takes place in her apartment. You witness these events, and how horrifying is that? Taking part in this horrific thing that they can't see. Reminds me a lot of Don't Breathe, that happened this year, came out this year, but only vice versa. Whereas Don't Breathe, you're following the people breaking into the house. This one, you're definitely following and rooting for the blind person who lives in the house. So, have you seen this one?
I have. Wait Until Dark is awesome. I did not know that it was a play. That must have been awesome to watch that as a play.
Definitely. It was terrifying because I was sitting there, and the whole live experience was definitely something else. Paige Porter actually just directed a production of it this last month, I think. So
wow,
it was definitely fun to see it again. So
that's awesome, man. So I'll get into my top pick, and actually my top pick, a little setup, is my favorite horror movie ever made, and that is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The plot summary for The Shining on IMDb is: a family heads to an isolated hotel for the winter where an evil and spiritual presence influences the father into violence, while his psychic son sees horrific forebodings from the past and of the future. This movie stars Jack Nicholson, and this is just not just horror, but it's filmmaking at its very, very finest. Stanley Kubrick, I wholeheartedly believe, was the best director of all time at framing a shot. He knew exactly how to make the actors move to just perfectly like embody the frame. Every single shot in this movie is gorgeous. There are sequences in this that are just flat out horrifying. The ending is just so iconic and amazing. It's really a brilliant director at the top of his game. This is definitely one of his best films, up there with 2001 and Doctor Strangelove, in my opinion. I love The Shining. I think that it's filled with great performances, great sequences. Ryan, have you seen The Shining?
no.
No?
That's one of the ones that, I mean, I've seen clips and I've seen parts because it's iconic, and it's one of those that I maybe eventually will, but I can't get myself to watch it.
It is probably in my top 10 favorite films of all time. I strongly recommend you just like put that aside and just try it, just because, like, honestly, man, for just the fact alone that this movie is so well shot. It's meticulously shot.
Okay, deal. I will get over myself and I'll put this on the list to watch.
You better.
My number one, speaking of Twilight Zone, is the Twilight. No, it's American Werewolf in London. Such a great old classic movie. Have you seen this one?
I cannot believe this, but I totally forgot about this. I made a point to put this on my list, and I did not. An American Werewolf in London is brilliant, all around brilliant. It's one of the best screenplays ever written. And it was actually written by Max Landis when he was like 19 years old or just something
What?
crazy young. Yeah, dude. And that movie, like from the opening scene, is just so great. It's hilarious. It's awesome. I totally wholeheartedly agree with everything you're about to say.
As I drop my phone everywhere, I had no idea Max Landis wrote this.
I mean, not Max Landis, John Landis. Sorry, his
Oh,
father, John
okay,
Landis.
okay. I was like, I didn't even know he was alive.
No, his father, John Landis, the director of Animal House and Blues Brothers. He wrote this when he was 19.
And he directed it.
And directed, yes.
Yeah, this is just that's the biggest highlight I was going to say. It's just such a well tight screenplay, very profound in its simplicity. Takes you back to all of those classic werewolf movies. It was made in 1981, and I feel like everything else we've been talking about, launched all of these horror films. This is such an iconic piece that and it's not even that scary in a sense that it's not one of those, like, I maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the Babadook, I feel like that one is so scary for its intense sequences, and there's a lot of jump scares.
There's like hardly any jump scares in Babadook at all.
Really?
There might be one jump scare in the entire movie.
See, and that's what I love so much about this one, is that it's just an intense thriller. You get this atmosphere, and he owns it. He owns this movie. John Landis is, like everyone else that we've talked about, a master, and I can't believe that he wrote this when he was like 19, because it's phenomenal. I see and hear about instances like that, and I'm like, I'm 23 years old. What have I done with my life? Geez, why can I not do something like this? So phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of wraps up my thoughts and my list. Do you have any final?
I do. Just quickly about American Werewolf in London, that werewolf transformation sequence. We talked about the practical effects of the Thing, and that really makes me mad that I didn't think of American Werewolf in London when we were talking about the practical effects of the Thing, because the werewolf transformation sequence in this movie holds up. I've watched American Werewolf in London this year, and it is so good. It still is funny. It's creepy in that transformation sequence especially, but the opening sequence, when you don't see the werewolf, when it's surrounding them and circling them in the fog, and we just see these actors' reactions of looking at the werewolf, and they're scared, and it's off camera. It's just so well directed. Like, honestly, people really underappreciate American Werewolf in London. It's a shame, because it really holds up well, and it's a great horror movie. And shame on me for not putting it on my list.
It does. I like what you said, and that brought up one of the thoughts that I had that I'd like to hear your opinion on just before we wrap up. But it does master something that foreign horror movies does really well. It captures the atmosphere, and it creates the creepy atmosphere surrounding a creature or something scary, and it does really well at showing you without showing you, because it understands really well that the creepiest things in this world are in your mind, and if you don't show that creepy thing until the specific payoff, your mind is just going to freak you out. You're going to create these images, and you're going to create the suspense yourself, which, like, the Ringu does very well, and all of those classic foreign films do, that I don't think Americans have really caught on to as much as we can.
I definitely agree. And in contrast to something like 31 that shows its audience everything that's scary, it's so much inferior to a film such as The Babadook that does exactly what you said. It sets you up for the scare and stops just in time for your mind to move forward and fill in the blanks and just terrify the living heck out of you just from what it doesn't show you. And what's really great is there's that great Jaws Spielberg quote that the scariest things are the things that we cannot see. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said about foreign horror directors and foreign horror films having a firmer understanding of atmosphere and setting up these characters in their horror movies. And Americans really have no sort of grasp on that whatsoever outside of indie American filmmakers. Yep. So I think that about wraps up the episode. Unless you have any last thoughts, Ryan.
No. That's everything we had planned for today. We've got some more widely released movies coming out in the next couple of weeks. There wasn't really anything coming out this week besides Inferno. I did see it. I would rank it very low. It was not a good movie. I'd give it like a 3 out of 10.
Oh boy, that's a shame. Ron Howard is a great director.
Yeah, and it wasn't very good. And granted, that's coming from someone who saw Da Vinci Code but didn't see Angels and Demons. So I kind of
it was not good.
There.
Angels and Demons is not good.
Really?
Not at all. Not at all.
So it sounds like it just declined and went off. So did you see Inferno?
I did not. I had no interest in catching it. I didn't like either Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons. So
all right. So that was all that was wide release this week. We are picking up from here on out. We're planning next month, or maybe the first week of December, a similar episode like this. We're going to be doing a Christmas special where we'll be recommending a bunch of Christmas movies for you to then watch throughout the rest of the month. I think that is all that we had for today. So you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Rye_Gordon. I did my first Periscope this last week and I ranted about the new Ouija movie that sucked.
He did rant about the new Ouija movie. That was okay. You can follow me on Twitter at SpinnyHen. And you can follow me on Instagram. Just Spencer Henderson is my name on that. Real quickly, I want to set up the hype train a little bit for next week because we're going to be talking about a big movie here. We're going to be talking about Doctor Strange and Hacksaw Ridge.
Oh, what about Trolls? Trolls comes out next week.
No, it doesn't. No. Yeah, maybe. Perhaps Trolls. If there's demand for Trolls, we will see Trolls. Let us know in the comments. If you are dying to have a review about Trolls, go ahead and send me and Ryan to experience that, please. I beg of you. And we will also check out Loving if it comes in our areas. It might be a limited release and we might not be able to see it quick enough. But thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you have any suggestions for our videos. We would love to hear feedback. Thank you. My name is Spencer. I'm a Cinemaholic.
My name is Ryan and I am a Cinemaholic. Bye.